Hi guys and welcome back. Today I'm working on this watercolor painting and I'm trying to focus back on some of those key original watercolor techniques that you learn. It's the kind of thing that after months or years of working in a certain medium, you start to slip away from remembering all of the basics and what really goes into making a really successful painting, whatever medium you're working in. So that's what today was, to get a little bit more connected with some of the approaches that I have had in the past. But I do want to give a really quick thank you to the sponsor of this video today, Skillshare. They, again, are really amazing. That's the reason that I love working with them, is because I love their product and their content. They have really high quality classes over there that all focus around creative endeavors, whether it's the creation of art side or if it's the business side of art or even lifestyle or crafting. There's just so much there to be able to go and get inspired by. So I do have a link down in the description. If you want to go follow that, you'll get 2 months for free to go check it out and try it and see how you like it. Today, I dug through a lot of the classes that are available over there to find some of the core watercolor classes. There's a bunch of them that really focus on some of the basics about washes and glazing and how to mix your paints. And normally when I work with Skillshare, I like to specifically choose a specific class and then follow along and create a project. But this one, I just wanted to get back into researching all of those pure, clean watercolor techniques that I've kind of rushed past and gotten a little bit hasty with. So let's talk a little bit about exactly what I did to create this painting. I think it's been a while since I've really just broken down my process and talked a little bit more in depth about the actual thing that I'm doing. So for the background, originally I did one nice blended textury, gritty kind of a wash with several different pigments. One particular one was Cascade Green from Daniel Smith, which is a heavily granulating watercolor. I also believe that I used Payne's Gray and I think one more blue color. I'm not positive, but I had done a little test sheet so I could test out how they would mingle together, and I really liked the look of it. And I knew that I wanted the background to feel very stormy and mysterious, I guess. So this was kind of a nice combination of it. But the first wash was, of course, not rich enough or deep enough, so I had to do a couple more. And then I also realized that I wanted her to feel a little bit more grounded, so I started painting in more of these cloud shapes at the bottom of the painting to give it a little bit more structure to the bottom of it and weight, rather than just having her floating in what would have been an evenly toned background. I did want it to have at least a little variation, even if it is very subtle. And then I moved on to creating the first initial wash on the bottom part of her dress, the skirt. So I went in with ultramarine blue from, again, Daniel Smith, and I just created one even solid wash. Normally I start with the skin first, but I kind of hopped around a lot with this painting. Then onto some of the first layer areas of that top part of her dress. This is definitely the part that I enjoyed the most when it came to painting this piece, because the top part is this sheer area, which I love painting in watercolors. It's really fun to be able to get that kind of effect. So first off, I went in with what would be like the local color of the fabric, which is that ultramarine blue, but then I also made sure to leave spaces for where the color from the background or skin underneath would show through. I specifically made sure that I layered a little bit more heavily with the ultramarine blue in areas where the fabric was folded over itself or bunched together, so that there would be more fabric that you're looking through, therefore more of that blue color. And at this point, I've already built up a little bit of some of the washes for her skin. This is definitely a work in progress. I work a lot on the skin where I add up a lot of different layers to get that final result. I think it looks particularly great with skin, since skin is translucent to a certain degree. But for her skin, I wanted it to still feel pretty cohesive with the dress color, and I wanted her to look very ghostly. So she is based in that ultramarine blue, and I believe it was quinacridone red that I used as the other color for the warmer parts of it. So since I already had that established in certain areas of her skin, I started to go into some of those gaps that I left in that sheer transparent layer for her fabric, and then I started building up where you would see her clothing, or see her through her clothing, I should say. So I did make sure to focus a little bit more of the of the color of her skin, where it would be pressed more tightly against the fabric. So where the fabric would be resting against her skin rather than flowing away from it would be where I would focus it. And then I drop back down to the skirt part of her dress, where I really wanted to take my time and build up the shadow shapes and values with a lot more layers than I normally do. I tend to be really rushed when it comes to that kind of thing because I like to focus on the face and certain interesting details, and then I get a little bit less patient with other areas. So this was a very specific effort that I tried to make, where I would start off with a lighter value of shadow and then allow myself to create the depth from multiple layers. So I start off with that same color that I created that first wash with, the ultramarine blue, and I just build it up in areas where I would want the shadow to be, as well as areas that would definitely be a very small indentation, as well as where it would be really deep and dark. So I knew that some parts I would absolutely have to build up, and other parts that first wash would be enough to give it a little bit more dimension to it. And then I went and just established more shadows on her skin. I'm using that same shadow color that I use in the dress, the ultramarine blue. I love being able to connect shadow colors with different areas of the painting. It just brings it all together really well, and I think it helps it look like it has one singular light source that's creating that shadow. And now I get to paint the hair. This is part that I think I tried to do in a similar way as the dress. So I actually kind of struggle with making things look as dimensional as I want when I'm wanting to paint an object black. Like her hair, I wanted her hair to be black, but I still wanted there to be different shapes that you could see within it and different highlights. But I also don't like it when there's just really strong white highlights and then really black, dark shadows. I like it to be a little bit more brought together and connected. So I did have a similar approach, like I said, with the dress, where I wanted to build up those shadow shapes with more lighter layers, and then finally at the end really punch up those areas that need to be a lot farther back. So I did actually do this with the neutral gray tint, I think, with M-Gram. I might have to check on that, but I initially was going to pull out my Payne's gray for this, but it is a very blue gray, and I decided that I was being a little bit too tied to feeling like I had to be really monochromatic and everything needed to be blue in the figure. So I am really happy with that. I'm glad that it's a little bit different from being a very, very cool gray for her hair and more of a neutral gray. So to start her hair, I do start just establishing where her highlights would be by not painting that and basically painting everywhere else, specifically focusing on areas that would have the darkest shadows in her hair. So I do try to make sure that I preserve the white of her highlight for as long as possible. I don't actually usually prefer to have the highlights in the hair to be white unless it's a lighter hair value. Actually, I don't like having really dark shadows and really high highlights. I like the whole value composition of hair to be a little bit closer. So I am leaving it white at the beginning, but I know that towards the end I'll actually do a wash that harmonizes everything and brings it back together. And I do start defining a little bit more of the flow of the hair and how it's twisting around it with the way that I break up the shadows and the highlights. So that's something that I can do in the line work phase as well as in the watercolor washing phase. And then I hop back to the skirt again. I did say that I hop all over the place with this piece, but I wanted to create a gradiated wash so that there's a little bit more interest and dimension to the dress. So I started off with a pre-mixed amount of the ultramarine blue and concentrated it on the bottom of her skirt, and then as I brought up that watercolor wash, I started to incorporate more and more water to my brush and to the wash, and eventually it ends up washing out to basically transparent by the time I get to the end of that wash. And that's how you can basically, very basically, create a graded wash. And for the sword, this is kind of the standout color. There's nowhere else really that has any color that's this bright of a yellow. So I did really want it to feel very bright and pure. So for the shadow areas, I actually go in with an orange and a red rather than going more desaturated like with a gray or a cool color, which absolutely works with gold. It just creates more of a tarnished look. And this one, I just wanted it to be like a brilliant gold. And I do have this original painting available at my shop, so if you'd like to own her, there is a link down there. She is $125, so she's a pretty good deal for an original painting. And I also have a link to my Patreon, which again is a great way to help support the channel and the artwork that I do. So I deeply appreciate all my patrons over there. There is exclusive content as well as the option to get art goodies mailed right to your door. And don't forget to check out Skillshare. There is a link down in the description that'll give you 2 months free, so you can go check that out and see if you like it. I personally love Skillshare, so yeah, that's it for today. So I'll be back next week with another video. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you then.